My name is Robert Bunn, founder of Ultrasound AI, and I'd like to ask a question. Do you have the audacity to prove the experts wrong and do the impossible? So I'd like to discuss a moment in history that seems very similar to this. In the 1850s, the idea of predicting the weather seemed completely absurd. I'm sure people said things like, "We've been watching the weather for thousands of years. If it were possible to predict it, we'd already be doing it." However, with inventions like the barometer, now we can see the storm coming before it makes landfall, and now weather prediction allows us to save many lives through preparation. Now I'd like to share an image that's very personal to me. This is a family vacation in Hawaii, and I have my 3 daughters sitting on the beach, staring at the ocean, and there's words written behind them in the sand that says, "Baby Bun number 4, July 2020. My family was so excited and so happy. My girls were so happy to have a new sibling. However, 35 days later, that dream was shattered. My wife suffered a miscarriage. It wasn't the first, and it certainly wasn't the last. She suffered numerous miscarriages. This destroyed my daughters. And my family asked many questions. Why can't doctors fix this? Why can't anyone fix this? And then I got to thinking, well, I'm someone, maybe I should do something. And I thought, well, what can I do? I'm just a data scientist in the oil industry. I have no medical background whatsoever. But I thought to myself, I need to solve this. I have no idea how, but I'm going to do it. I want to share one more thing with you. Ever since I was 10 years old, I've dreamed of winning a Nobel Prize. And it's something I've thought about probably every single day since I was 10 years old, believe it or not. When someone says they dreamed of winning an Oscar their whole life, I actually believe those people. And I felt like this was worthy of this kind of ambition. And so now to do this, I needed data. And so what's the most common type of data for pregnant women worldwide? It's ultrasound imaging. Now my hypothesis was simple. If I could predict the delivery date from the ultrasound imaging alone with an AI, then the doctors would have weeks or even months to prepare and intervene and prevent a premature birth or miscarriage. So I basically had to get to work in my basement. I didn't have a powerful computer, so I had to cannibalize a bunch of old computers I had, and I made this Frankenstein workstation. And I got to work. I figured I'll just do the best I can. And I went to talk to some obstetricians about my idea, because I thought I should at least get some advice from the experts. Maybe they had some great advice that might help me be successful in this. But what they said to me was, this is not going to work. It's impossible. Basically what they said was, we've been looking at ultrasound images for decades, and if it were possible to predict the delivery date of a premature baby with ultrasound images, we would already be doing it. So I stopped telling people about my idea because I figured it'd be less humiliating when it turned out that they were right. And so I got to work. I worked on this day and night for an entire year, and I was failing miserably. And so one night I set off a new experiment. I went to bed, and going to bed thinking, the doctors are right. I really should be listening to the experts on this one. But I was too tired, so I just let the experiment run that I had going. I knew it'd fail, but I didn't feel like dealing with it. So I let it run, woke up the next morning, and lo and behold, it was working. So I went back to these doctors, and I told them that I actually had a huge success in this, and I was hoping that they would be as excited as I was about it. And the response was kind of surprising to me, to be honest. They basically said, this is absolutely not possible. You must have made a mistake. It just cannot be done, like we told you previously. And so So I had to prove it. I hooked up with the University of Kentucky. I found some researchers there who were extremely skeptical, to say the least, but they realized that if I was right, and this really did work, this would revolutionize the field of obstetrics, and it would save millions of lives, and it was worth the risk. And so I'll be forever grateful to the researchers there for taking a chance on this, and me, someone who has had no experience in medicine at all. And so I think they deserve enormous credit for this. And so over 4 years, we got a lot of data. They held back a lot of data to independently validate it, which I didn't have the answers to, so we could be certain that it actually worked. And 4 years we iterated on it, improved the accuracy, and finally we published the results. And now it was proven. The impossible is possible. And so what this reveals is that there is a lot of hidden information in medical images, information that's imperceptible to the human eye, perhaps patterns that are incomprehensible to the human brain, but they are there nonetheless. So our preliminary research suggests that many medical events, even unrelated to pregnancy, may be predictable with high accuracy from medical images alone. So this reveals something a little deeper and far more profound. When we looked at the results of the AI model, what we found is that it was actually predicting the delivery dates of babies who had to be induced prematurely to save the life of the mother. And that was quite puzzling, because what that meant is that the AI, in order to do that, it had to predict a life-threatening condition would occur, and it had to predict when that life-threatening condition would happen and when that doctor would need to intervene. So there's so much more to this. And so that opens up a whole new paradigm in medicine, one where we predict the future and prevent it, rather than diagnosing the present and then trying to fix it. Now imagine a world where instead of a doctor telling you that you have cancer and that we need to start you on chemotherapy, what if that doctor would say, well, you will have cancer in 2 months, but we can prevent that now. That world is now possible. Now, perhaps the most exciting thing about all this is who can make all these new discoveries. So my story highlights a massive shift in medicine and research in general. You no longer need specialized training or formal education. AI is the great equalizer. Now you need is passion, a little delusion, or perhaps a lot of delusion in my case, and a lot of audacity, and anything is possible. So my dream is to ensure that every woman on Earth has access to this technology, regardless of her ability to pay. Considering how cheap the inference costs are, this is absolutely achievable. This can run on very old computers, it can run on tablets, it can run without the internet. This could be available in remote villages in Uganda or Chile, no problem. Ultrasound imaging is ubiquitous around the world. And I want to save every one of those 1 million babies who die every single year from premature birth, which is the #1 killer of children under 5. And I also believe that global health equity is now possible. So this is my family now. As you can see, everyone's happy and healthy. We faced all the hardships and the challenges, but now we're excited about the future and everything that's now possible. And so, as the saying goes, all is well that ends well. Thank you.
So we haven't got long, so I'm going to just talk through what we call services and software. It's a vision we've had for a year or so, and we've been talking about a shift from what we used to talk about as labour arbitrage when you're trying to get work done in organisations, more towards technology arbitrage. And it started with staff augmentation offshore. We went to more technology-enabled services. We came up to platform-led services, and now we're kind of into AI-led agentic services, and that's made us think a little differently about the timeline for this, because we were predicting we were going to get to services as software by 2030, but we're now saying that's probably around the corner, 2028, because of services and software emerging much faster. So it's a new category, and I wanted to give you the distinctions between the two. I think it's a very, very disruptive thing. It's going to transform two large markets, selling software as a service. So the whole that's going to be the world of technology service providers, the SIs, the GSIs, and on the flip side of that, you've got the SaaS world, where there has been very much a nice way of making everyone work in a similar way, a one-size-fits-all approach, and both have got to change. So if I look at the comparison between those verticals, I look at SaaS, and the delivery method has been static software. It's kind of one-size-fits-all. Yeah, we might update once a quarter, and then things break, and it's a bit painful. And we've got data that says that the buyers are really quite annoyed with it now. They're fed up and they want something different. So their ability to customize is difficult, so you get this one-size-fits-all, a kind of best practice rather than a right practice approach to how companies are forced to work, because the software makes you work in a certain way. And the pricing is per seat, and it's feature-based. The adaptability you have available to you, well, you don't, because it's a preset workflow that someone's going to force on you. In the services world, it's very people-driven, the delivery model. Customization, very labour-intensive, and pricing is all about billable hours and FTE numbers. In adaptability terms, custom consulting is the solution, the way forward for that. Now, as we shift into services as software, we think this becomes a delivery model which is around AI delivery, AI-driven autonomous solutions. Customization then becomes infinite. This is why I talk about right practice versus best practice, because we are into an interesting space where we've always had to do what we've been told by the technology for some time. This is maybe the first time that we can tell the technology what to do. This is the first time that we can really genuinely drive differentiation in how we build our companies. And I think that's a first, actually, for about 50 years. In pricing terms, it forces everyone to think about outcome-based consumption pricing. And for adaptability, well, of course, you've got on-the-fly AI, effectively responding in real time to needs as they emerge. Now, we were just talking a little bit about the scale of this opportunity, and we've been very conservative in this. We think the opportunity is around 1.5 trillion, and it's going to come from absorbing markets on both sides. So both services and tech providers are going to have to buy into this. And this is something that's starting to emerge now, and we expect to be really disruptive within a couple of years. I think it's really interesting because you've got both the services industry is going to have to change, and so is the software industry. And that's difficult for incumbents. They've built their whole histories on certain models. It makes for a great opportunity for startups, actually, anyone without all of that incumbency, to come in and build right now as a services and software solution. One final piece is to consider what this does to how we work. There's an issue with AI in that it's going to be kind of forced on everyone. It's going to be a lowest common denominator, a table stakes piece. You've got to invest in it or you become irrelevant. But it's an expensive way just to maintain relevancy and maintain your place in the market. The things that are going to make companies stand out is doubling down on three things, what I would call the human premium, and that's about integrity, intimacy, and imagination. I think the intimacy piece is so far overlooked a little. I find we like to go to events now. We like to spend time with people. That's a really important thing that an LLM can't do and doesn't care about. You've You've got to look at the things that LLMs can't do and double down on those if you really want to create your differentiation. So you've got at the same time, you've got this ability to be able to differentiate with AI, not just for the enterprise, but for your enterprise. And that's what we get through services and software. But also the ability to differentiate through doubling down on what I would call the human premium. And there we're talking about intimacy and integrity, the integrity to do the sniff test, you know the stuff well enough to be able to know whether it's right or wrong, and the intimacy with people, and the intimacy with the information. And I think the intimacy thing gets interesting because the more brilliant we get at digital, the more brilliant we get at making our world seem digitally perfect, the more we are worried about whether we can trust it. So every time you go on a Teams call in the future, are you going to be able to trust that that's actually the person you think you're speaking to? Are they actually saying what you're hearing? And that's going to force us, I think, more and more into the real world in order to build relationships and meet people, do deals, and actually build the ecosystems that we're going to need to succeed. The final part of the human premium, the imagination, I'm sure you're all familiar with, is simply the idea that in order to make any of this stuff do anything, a human has to come up with a smart way of using it. We have to think at the other end of the scale. LLMs solve problems, we have to find problems. That's the human premium. So, in conclusion, I just would ask you to think seriously about whether you've got a role to play in converting what you're doing or whatever section you're looking at in industry to a more services and software model. I genuinely think this is going to be the new post-AI business paradigm, and we should all play a part in it. Thank you.
So artificial intelligence has been the word, or the two words, with the highest number of mentions in headlines since the launch of ChatGPT in November 2022. At least according to three sources: ChatGPT, Claude, and DeepSeek. But today I don't want to talk about headlines, but rather the lines behind the headlines and the extent to which AI is redrawing the lines in the investment landscape, in the economy, and also in financial markets and inside corporations. Let's kick it off with CapEx. CapEx is a variable in most macroeconomic models, and it usually drives economic growth and a productivity boom. And also, if we look back at history, back to the CapEx boom for the railroads, then afterwards electrification, and obviously in the 1990s, the CapEx boom with the internet. All three yielded incredible improvements in productivity. So if we look at CapEx, and in particular, just the amount of hyperscaler CapEx that we have seen since the launch of ChatGPT, we see that it has increased the percentage of private fixed investments in the US by about 3%. So it's actually grown from 3% to 6% of private fixed investments over the last 3 years. And now, at about 350 billion, it is more than 1% of US GDP. So what does this mean for the financial markets? Let's take a look at the top performers in the S&P 500 since the launch of ChatGPT. And what we'll see is that the AI enablers, those companies that are providing the input to AI data centers, have seen the strongest performance. NVIDIA, of course, stands out at 11.2x. This almost sounds like venture returns now in the public markets. Broadcom, and also Arista. All three sell critical components for the AI data center. But even if you take out NVIDIA, you still see that the average of the AI winners has outperformed the average of the other top performers in the S&P 500. So the question then is this just a US phenomenon? And if we look at the markets globally, we actually see that this is not just the case in the US. Also, all the other regions, China, and also the EU show the same pattern. The AI winners are outperforming the non-AI winners. So could this just be a technology phenomenon? Here we're looking at countries. Let's take a look at performance per sector. And there we even see that the outperformance of the AI winners is again much higher than the average performance of the other categories. So I think what that shows is that AI increasingly is becoming its own category. And the way we are segmenting the investment universe across countries and sector is no longer sufficient to capture this new opportunity set. So ultimately we have to ask, for every question and every investment, is this company a beneficiary of AI, or is it being disrupted by AI? And one metric that we have seen that is driving this distinction in particular is the revenue by employee. And what's interesting is the companies that are enabling AI, that are on the winning side of AI, actually also have shown a much higher revenue per employee, on average up 33%, that ratio since the launch of ChatGPT. So it's driving real economic outcomes. But how early or late are we in this game? We actually think that we are quite early if you look at the amount of compute that we will require as we are heading into 2030. We looked at this from the perspective of brain activity that generative AI is likely to perform by then. And the best metric is flops, floating point operations per second. How many mathematical computations will AI need to perform, especially with the advent of agentic AI? And we predict that it's going to be 20,000 exaflops, so up from around 800 exaflops right now. And that will require a compute capacity that is now 5 times the existing install base. So even though, of course, these enablers of AI have already strongly performed, we think it's still quite early in the opportunity set. Thank you very much.
We are at the beginning of a revolution like we've never seen before. And I would say the fundamental reason is that we can talk to the machines and the machines can talk back. The operating system of humanity and of organizations is conversation. And we've been automating things for, depending upon how you count it, at least 150 years. But this is the first time that the motion isn't taking things out of people's bodies and animals and their minds and putting it into the machine. But now it's a dialogue. And that's fundamentally different because it changes the liquidity of knowledge. The simple way to think about these tools from a productivity standpoint is that they're power tools. Imagine if you hired an electrician and you came home to put in a couple of outlets. And you came home and that electrician was sitting there with a hand drill, putting that outlet into the wall. You'd say, what the heck? I'm paying you $150 an hour. Why don't you use a power drill? If you walk down the cube farm of any organization and people aren't using AI, they are doing the cognitive version of hand drills. Right? They are just not using the power drills that are available to them now. And this is especially true for what I call WINS work, which is work made up of creating or improving words, images, numbers, and sounds. Words, images, numbers, and sounds. So we're talking before about services as software. Services is largely words, images, numbers, and sounds. Why did Tyler Perry cancel a multi-billion-dollar studio investment when he saw Sora from Google? The answer is because he said, I can do it in the machine. Why would I spend $1.5 billion to build a studio? And wrote about this in a Harvard Business Review article some time ago about how to think about where your business is. And this is true at the task level. Am I in marketing? So am I creating new marketing copy? At the function level, accounting. At the industry level, services or entertainment. And that, if you're WINS intensive, you're more likely to be affected by this. Now, here's some on-the-ground information. Firms are spending more across all different sizes. This is data from Bain. Overall, the average budgets for AI are going up, and the average IT budget is becoming a bigger part of the cost base, and AI is being a bigger part of the IT base as we see a technology substitution for labor and other activities. And this is true, and you can see here across different size organizations, 50 million to 500 million, 500 million to 5 billion, over 5 billion. The trend is the same. I'm going to give you three quick case studies that have been well researched. First one is GetCherry.com, which is a company that does loans, car loans and refinancings. And they put in chatbots in terms of answering things on SMS or over text. And they went from having 100% of their interactions escalated to humans down to only 11%, and that happens quickly. This turns out to be a return on investment of $4 million in the year, and a continuing ability to leverage the organization because they believe there are 5 million customers right now. They think they can grow 3 times as large with the same 32 people they have in the customer service department. There's a company called One Digital that is pushing forward with hybrid design. What they do, they are a privately held insurance financial services company serving individual companies and individuals within it. So helping with benefits and investments. And they now have a group of what they call digital employees. So this is from their internal system, and you can go in and you can hire different digital workers. You can hire Coach Jesper, you can hire Frank the Closer, your virtual assistant, and you can go in and you can interview them through chat, and you can also look at their resume, which is what have they been trained on. And now they have, their notion is that they want to have a ratio of digital employees to human employees, and their aim is to take their best producers up. And they are finding that it is making their people more productive. Their best producers are using it the most, and they started out with about a dozen chatbots, and now they're going to go to over 2 dozen as they grow the ability to mix human and digital workers. This is the third one is P&G, Procter & Gamble. And there's a fantastic study out of Harvard and Wharton, and what they did is they did a team and an individual with and without AI. And the task was to come up with new product innovations, something that P&G knows a little bit about. If anybody knows about new product innovation and first validation, it could be Procter & Gamble, right? This is like talking about canon law with the Pope, right? This is a core competency. And the treatment's very simple. Individual and team with and without AI. Here's what they found. Average solution quality. And for those of you who remember those I-beam shaped things are bar charts. They're the, box plots. They're the first standard deviation around the average, right? So we've got the individual with no AI in terms of standard quality, team with no AI. An individual plus AI outperforms a team. Think about this. Procter & Gamble, an individual plus AI outperforming a team of experts. And these things were graded blind by experts on new product innovation. And then the team plus AI came out with the best average solution quality. Then this I found interesting. Time saved, okay. And as you would imagine that, alone plus AI saves a ton of time. Team saves less on average. This, I was really surprised by. This is positive emotion toward using the tool during the task. People feel good about having an AI coworker. The team with no AI, individual plus AI, the team plus AI felt the best about having an outside silicon intelligence helping them. And this is the most important thing. If you understand the distribution of value and the introduction of new products, it's usually a very small number at the very top, usually less than 5%, that succeed. So the top 10% solutions were completely dominated with a team plus AI. So if you think about that, Procter & Gamble, core competency, introducing new product, team plus AI, dominating top 10 solutions. What's going to happen? Intelligence will continue to get infused into the organization because the cost of silicon intelligence is collapsing. LLM prices have fallen, usually about 10 times a year. So that's way, way faster than Moore's Law. In terms of what you have to do to get an organization there, I really think that you have to think about building a capability, not buying a technology. And how do you do that? Well, first of all, you have to get your organization to think about what kind of content they are consuming, because if you don't consume the right content, you don't know this is going on. The second thing, capability. I have not seen an organization that has successfully implemented AI that didn't do a tremendous amount of in-person, along with on device, education and capability building. There's something about this that people want to talk to other people and be taught about it. Community, learning labs, communities, conferences, and then curation. The notion of just waiting on Microsoft or Google to give you your full AI strategy is really a waste. And the last thing is, you ought to ask yourself about your company maturity level. And we see four kinds of companies. What we call toe dippers. Those are people who come in and try something. They're not committed. They're part of that 95% that aren't being successful with it. Level 2 is islands of innovation. You've got a department. Hey, we saved some time in legal. We saved some time in marketing. Customer service is using this. But there's no integrated strategy. Then there's orchestrators, people who actually take learnings and bring them across the organization. Folks like Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan do that. And then the last level is intelligence leveragers. So this organization, Google, is an intelligence leverager. That's where they use AI to build AI. And we're starting to see that if you're at level 1 or level 2 and you try to come in and do a major transformation, it just doesn't work. There's not enough knowledge and capability in the organization to actually consume or even answer the question of how you would transform. And we haven't seen anybody jump over these yet. This notion of intelligence leveragers, I'm predicting that in every major industry, we're going to see a small number of companies break out, be the intelligence leveragers, and they're going to garner a disproportionate amount of the profit pools available in that industry. So, for example, just to make it concrete, if you take the big 4 accounting firms right now, PwC, Deloitte, KPMG, and E&Y, I believe that their profit pools, the profitability across the different partnerships is split about 30%, 25, 25, 20, okay? I would predict in less than 10 years, the one who becomes an intelligence leverager is going to garner 50% of the profits in that industry, and the other 3 are going to fight it out. And that's going to happen in industry after industry. And you see it happening with folks like Google here and Facebook and so forth. So the power, this is not a normally distributed improvement. The leaders are going to pull ahead faster. They're going to get incredible barriers to entry as they create capabilities because they have the combination of the machine learning loop and the human learning loop working together. And in order to get there, you have to change the nature of the content, the capability, the community, and the curation that you do in your organizations. Thank you.
Winning distribution in the age of Gen Z and AI, but that's what I'm here to talk about in the best ways to effectively social media market. Is there a clicker? Perfect. All right, so we're going to keep it very simple agenda, background and key observations, the future of social media, and 4 keys to success. A little background about myself. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Sochi, the first AI employee as a social media manager. And I myself have grown collectively over 100,000 followers across various accounts on different platforms. And I've grown over 15 million views as well. And what I'm going to share with you guys today is my own personal experience, as well as experience and research that I've gathered from a lot of my friends who are also creators with hundreds of thousands of followers as well. So key observation number 1, Gen Z has killed professionalism. I see this to be true. If you look at every single platform, Gen Z continues to dominate the ecosystem and all of the content that's being put out. 1, because they understand what goes viral, and 2, because they've grown up on these platforms, alongside these platforms and the algorithms, and they understand what works and what converts. And one reason for that is they understand this notion that people buy from people. One ethos we have at Sochi is we strongly believe in founder-led marketing and founder-led storytelling, growing your own personal brand alongside your business brand, and being able to effectively communicate your story to your audience. We're moving away from a generation that's showing generic TV ads and commercials, and more into these curated algorithms on your short form feeds. And as you scroll through, you're going to be seeing a lot more hyper-personalized content that's tailored to you and exactly what you want. And if you're able to authentically connect with the person behind that screen rather than the as a company trying to share yourself as a product or company, you're going to have a lot more success. And the key observation with AI is there's going to be a ton more volume, right? So there's a lot of positive and negative implications to that. One of the negative implications is obviously there's a lot of AI slop that comes out from the AI, and you have to be able to filter through that noise and compete against that noise. And we initially started Sochi actually as a hackathon project hosted by Y Combinator and Supabase, and we actually ended up winning the hackathon. And our goal is essentially to pull all of this creator knowledge into an AI agent and give that to businesses to effectively market their services and teaching them how to effectively leverage AI successfully for social media marketing. And the way we see the future of social media is 3 different case scenarios. Number 1, they're going to ban AI. And this is, in my opinion, the least likely. And if anything, it'll be a temporary, ineffective solution, because at the rate that AI is advancing, they're going to find some ways to effectively avoid and evade these detection mechanisms, which will, in my opinion, lead to new gen AI social media platforms if they do end up restricting AI on the existing platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and so forth. And I believe the new gen AI social media platforms will be more successful, because at the end of the day, it just matters where the attention is going. And if AI is a lot more abundant and more personalized, then people's attention is likely going to go there. And the second case scenario is the Great Divide, where I believe there's going to be dedicated streams for AI and dedicated streams for human feeds on every single social media platform that we encounter. But the requirement for that is having a sophisticated human verification technology or having a sophisticated AI detection technology. And there's a lot of people working in this space to figure out what content is real and what's not, but it's a very difficult problem to solve. However, there are brilliant people working on this problem, so I do believe this is a very valid possibility. And in this case scenario, money follows attention, and that's what I'm going to keep preaching on about, is that money goes where attention flows, and you should focus your time on where the attention is most, right? In this case scenario, if people are resonating more with the human verified content, then you yourself need to be focused on making more human verified content yourself, making more human content, UGC content, all that kind of stuff. But if you're focused on, or if you see a lot of people are focused on the AI content and trying to, a lot of the attention is going there, then you should be trying to leverage these AI tools effectively yourself and, make sure that you stay ahead of the curve so that you don't get left behind. And the third case scenario, which I believe is the most likely, is the Wild West. And this is kind of depicted by this diagram here, where you can see all the people fighting for attention. Attention is king, and it's going to be the people who aren't using AI and the people who are using AI who have an advantage because they're able to put out so much more volume. And this is the case scenario where I see that AI is likely to win because AI will continue to get smarter and smarter, and you can just put out so much more content on a daily basis compared to the guy who isn't using AI. And one thing I will say is that social media marketing itself, if there's anything that I've learned, is 95% consistency and experimentation over a long period of time. So it's just figuring out what works and what doesn't over a long period of time and trying out different content forms. And in my own experience, I think AI is going to be the perfect mechanism to actually implement this and be able to learn content strategy over time, try out new content forms for you, and learn from that data to improve itself. But that leads me to the last point there, is pay to play, because there will be so much more noise out there, so much AI content and fluff out there. There's going to be this notion of paying to play, or paying to supersede all of that AI noise. And that's going to look a little differently from traditional ads that you would see on somewhere on the side of your screen, but it's going to be more directly integrated into your own feeds. And you're likely not even going to notice it, but it's going to be a lot of these boosted posts that just get boosted out to more people in your specific niche, but you're paying to get your content out there if you don't already have a strong brand in place. And now finally, the 4 keys to success. What can you actually do about it to help stay relevant in the next era of social media marketing? 1, I would say systematically move your audience from rented to owned platforms. And what does that mean? A rented platform is something like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, what you traditionally think as social media. Whereas an owned platform is a one-to-one communication system that you have with them, an email list, Discord, Slack, more recently school. People are using these communities and growing these communities of their loyal followers, and these are a lot more valuable compared to the rented platforms because you're fighting against all the additional noise on there and you're fighting for the attention. But in the owned platforms, these people are directly engaged with your product and more likely to share your product with all the people even on the rented platforms if they really like what you're doing and they're engaged in your community. So really focusing on that. Number 2 is leveraging AI to increase your volume. We are nowhere near mass adoption in social media marketing. In fact, HubSpot published a blog last year that said 94% of businesses are still worried about AI potentially damaging their own reputation either through hallucinations or factual inaccuracies. And although I do think this is the case, there are still a lot of ways to effectively use AI to help improve your own workflows. You just have to be able to effectively use these different tools and know what's the best content strategy, because there's certain dead AI giveaways like using an M dash in your content or being a little too friendly. There's certain giveaways that people see on your social media posts, and if you're just one-shotting your prompts into ChatGPT, people can obviously tell that, and that will actually do more harm than good to your social media platform. So I would recommend in studying the strategy and exactly what we're doing at Sochi, studying the content strategy before you actually go out and leverage these AI tools. Number 3, start now, move fast, define your brand, and become a category of one. In startup terms, this is pretty similar to defining your competitive advantage. What is your unique brand advantage that you're going to show to your audience? What is the way that you're going to have a unique edge in your niche? What's uniquely different about you and your personal brand? People aren't looking to connect with generic company brands, as I said before. People and a lot of the Gen Z audience and people growing on these platforms, which will become more prevalent over time, are looking to authentically connect with the content that they're watching. And this is why I believe hyper-personalization will win. As AI becomes smarter and smarter, the targeting systems on these algorithms will also become smarter and smarter. And you will be forced to essentially adapt to the system and create content that matches the hyper-personalization level of these AI tools, or better off just use these AI tools itself, right? And effectively leverage them, as I said before. But if you follow these 4 keys to success, I believe you will be able to find a lot of success in the social media space if you do it consistently over a long period of time and just keep experimenting with new content forms, and you guys will do great. So, okay, I think it just ended. All right, thank you.